Hello. You are listening to the Carroll Connection with your host, Jared Carroll.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Carroll Connection. I'm your host, Jared Carroll, here to bring you guys another great episode. I did want to take a chance to shout out last week's episode 91. It's Your Journey, featuring Mike Braga. First time he's been back on the podcast in a minute. We talked about everything that he's been up to in the last year and a half, just about. And he's obviously a videographer. He talked about a lot of the films that he's been producing and acting in some short films. Really great conversation. Conversation was centered around focusing on your journey specifically and kind of trying not to compare yourself all the time. We talked a little bit about the imposter syndrome that we do feel throughout our life. And it was a really great conversation. You can check it out, thecarrollconnection.simplecast.com. Also available Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the major listening platforms. So for today, finally bringing back a new guest for the first time in a month. Episode 92, Johnny Costa.
What's up, guys?
Glad that you came on the podcast. And I know we had
Thanks for having me.
We had an episode scheduled before, had to reschedule, but glad that you reached back out and we were able to schedule something. So excited to do this. So tell the audience a little bit about yourself, who you are and what you're doing currently.
So my name is Johnny Costa. I'm 25 years old. I am a member of the East Providence Fire Department. I live in Riverside, Rhode Island. I grew up there my entire life. Like you, right? I think you've been in Seekonk your entire life?
Yeah.
I have a 4-year-old daughter, so I'm a very young dad. I had her when I was 21 years old. So
yeah, and we'll dive into that probably a little bit later in the podcast. So like I mentioned to you off podcast, the first part of what we talk about is family dynamic, kind of how you were raised, whether it's siblings, your parent structure, obviously whatever you're comfortable with. I think it's good to talk about these things, especially on a podcast where we're not really famous, and it kind of lets people know where we come from, and it kind of sets the foundation for the entire episode. So if you could just kind of give people a little taste of how you were raised and a little bit of your family dynamic, obviously whatever you're comfortable with.
So I come from a big mainly Portuguese and Irish family.
Same.
And Portuguese too?
Yeah. Mostly Portuguese, actually.
Mostly Portuguese, some Irish in there. Yeah. We were very close growing up. I have two siblings, an older brother and older sister. My parents were married pretty much my entire childhood. And my mother, she did career services growing up. My dad was a correctional officer. And they were very loving parents. They did what they had to do to provide for us. At a very young age, I lived with my grandparents. So my immediate family lived with my grandparents up until I was about in middle school. And then once my dad got the job as a correctional officer, we ended up buying a house in Riverside. And so we lived there, and I have a lot of great memories from there. And we were living the American dream. My parents were together. We had 2 dogs. And
I want to dive into, sorry to cut you off. I want to dive into the fact that you lived with your grandparents too for that long.
We did, yeah.
How was that experience? Because I know a lot of people don't get that experience to be around their grandparents that often. And obviously, I've lost my grandfather recently, and it's something that we don't always appreciate until we're a little bit older, when we kind of grasp the concept of age and aging. So right. How is being raised in a house where you have your parents, obviously, and your grandparents? That's probably a pretty unique experience.
Yeah. So it was separated because it was an upstairs and downstairs. Yeah. So we obviously saw them all the time, but it was we kind of had our own space down there. And at a young age, I didn't really get that from my grandparents either. I didn't understand their age and wisdom and everything. Interestingly enough, I live with my grandfather now, so I actually returned back to that house, and now I'm older, so it's a whole different dynamic. And my grandmother has since passed, so we spend a lot of time together and talk to each other.
Yeah, the relationships, and if anyone has grandparents that are still actively alive, and I do have my grandmother's still alive, I have a unique family dynamic. My paternal grandparents divorced, so I had an extra set of grandparents. So it was a unique scenario. My mom's parents have passed when I was very young, so I still have those grandparents. But I wanted to say was if you have grandparents that are still living, have an active relationship with them, because
100%.
It's invaluable for especially for them, like obviously we don't understand because I mean a lot of us don't have children. You do have a daughter, so like you're closer towards maybe understanding than maybe myself. But like seeing your kids eventually have kids and all this stuff, like it's this feeling, and maybe we could touch upon it a little bit of like being a dad. Like it's probably almost an indescribable feeling a little bit.
Yeah, you don't get it until you have your own child.
You want to dive into that a little bit because like I wanted to. We'll push that a little bit later in the podcast because I want to go a little bit chronologically. Diving a little bit past, obviously, the family dynamic, we go into kind of like childhood, sports. I mean, we played football together. That's kind of how we formed our relationship. Talking a little
Tigers.
bit, yeah, shout out to Seekonk Tigers back in the day. Let's talk about a little bit about sports, hobbies, like what you did during your childhood. Like obviously football was an aspect. Was there other sports? Were there other hobbies? I know music's been a part of your life too.
Yes. I played baseball, soccer, and I wrestled in middle school.
Wrestling, okay. I haven't had someone. I don't think I've had someone on the podcast. If someone has, I'm sorry. But
yeah, I did for 2 years. 2 years in middle school. I've only played baseball and soccer for like 1 year, I think each. So football was always the main sport for me. I think I started when I was like 7. At Seekonk Tigers. The Raiders at the time, I lived in Riverside my whole life, but the Raiders at the time didn't have a Mighty Might team, and I was too small, which, like a lot of guys in East Providence, they were too small. They didn't fit that age range and weight gap. You know how football is all weight-based. So we all went over to Seekonk, so that's how we met.
Yeah, glad we stole you from that.
yeah, stole a lot of good players.
We did. I remember Jackson Smith, I think was his name.
Jackson.
Yeah, I haven't talked
Jackson
to him in a
Smith,
minute. Yeah, it was Jackson.
I was just thinking, like, who was on that team?
I think we had Josiah
Hatch.
Yeah.
I forgot about Jackson. Yeah, he was good.
Yeah.
Right.
Those, what was the other one? Johnny Almeida. I don't know if he was Riverside. I think he was East Providence. I don't know if you ever played with him.
Bell.
I'll show you his Instagram.
John Almeida.
Yeah. Portuguese kid.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, that's not very descriptive, is it?
No, not in East Providence. Or Seekonk, probably.
So with football, why was that the sport that you favored? Because I obviously I talk about football a lot on the podcast, as you guys know. But for you, what was it about football for you?
Just stuck, man. Like, I just loved it. A big thing was my cousin, TC. Him and his father were very involved with the Seekonk Tigers. And he played football a lot. I did a lot of the same things that he did. He was my older cousin. So I kind of stuck with football, and I just fell in love with it. I just love everything about the game.
Yeah, I for me, it was always like, I didn't realize it until I got like obviously a little bit older and a little bit more introspective with the sport itself, because it's the team atmosphere. Like there's really no sport like it where, I mean, hockey maybe with the physicality is probably the closest sport to it, but like you got like all these dudes on the field together, you're going to essentially war with these dudes.
A beating.
Yeah.
So like a lot of kids, I started off the year and I wasn't even friends with them. By the end of the year, you're just like best friends with all these guys on your team because, like you said, you go through war.
Yeah, it's especially in our youth, it is so, for me, I've always said it too, it's always so important to try to introduce children to sports because it's the easiest way to get us kind of like socialized and introduce us to these different, how do I say this, dynamics between human beings essentially, because especially if you look at it now too with the pandemic, how it's isolated a lot of people. Mental health has become a huge issue. I was hearing on the news the other day that a lot of people, especially a lot of children, are having very slow development, especially early childhood, because like when you have the face coverings and things like that, it's hard to read. Yeah. So it's scary to see that stuff, and that highlights the importance of playing sports when you're younger because you're allowed to get those relationships.
My daughter's 4. We just got into T-ball this past fall. So like I said, my cousin TC, shout out to him and his dad. They've been huge. Like they're just good influences. You know, they're like positive people that have always been in my life. And so my Uncle Tom is the coach of that team, and he's the coach of like a million teams in East Providence. Half the people that watch this probably gonna know who he is, but yeah, we got into T-ball and we did soccer. So definitely, especially for her, she's an only child, to get that like social aspect, you know.
Yeah, to collab and like work with other kids, and it teaches teamwork, and like that's so important. Like to be able to share and like to not be so like selfish and egotistical. Because like if you're, and they always talk about the only child syndrome too, and I've talked to multiple guests about it too.
One of the ones you just had on was talking about that actually.
Yeah. So like there is this thing where when you're the only child, you get favored by your parents. I mean, if there's no other children to have to attend to, then that child's going to get most of the care and attention. So that makes sense that there might be an inclination for that child to be a little bit more selfish and not willing to share with whether it's cousins or friends or whatever it is. So to introduce them early enough to other kids and teach them those things, and like to work on that, like you have to share and do those little things. And I think it's super important, because we're seeing it now, how important it is when you remove this social aspect to our culture. And like, to me, it's so interesting. And that's why I love talking about these different dynamics with so many different people, because we all do different things. Did you play football all the way through high school too?
I did, yeah.
How was that experience balancing going into school, doing obviously schoolwork, being a student athlete? Like, did you ever struggle with that? Was it something that just kind of came natural to you that you always did?
Fortunately, it just came natural. I mean, like, I did really well in academics in high school. I'm a good test taker, so I always did pretty well with that. So I guess I was just fortunate in that aspect.
What position did you play in high school?
I played quarterback.
You played quarterback in EP?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you start all? I don't know how they're if they have like a freshman, sophomore.
I started junior and senior year.
How was the teams those? I can't say that I paid close attention to East Providence.
The teams? Yeah. So we didn't do as well as East Providence has done in its history, but I mean, I had a great time. You know, that's what it's all about at that level. I mean,
EP's pretty competitive too.
Yeah,
so like you guys are playing good schools. Don't you guys play like LaSalle and like Hendricken and shit? Yeah, you guys are playing good schools. Like, I mean, we didn't play that many good schools. I'll keep it a buck.
It was a lot of fun, man. I had fun with it. That was the main thing. Yeah. And I, like you said, I made a lot of friends.
Lifelong friends.
Lifelong friends that I still, I mean, from Seekonk Tigers all the way to Townies, I still hang out with a lot of guys.
Yeah, this right here is the perfect like example of how important playing sports when you are younger, because I think we were talking this right when we went outside. Like, I think the last time was probably when we were younger that we actually like talked and had maybe
seen each other in passing.
Yeah, maybe, but like I couldn't recall. So like to be able to have that connection from that young, and obviously social media plays a huge plus into this, being able to maintain that.
Yeah.
So like, but that's just proof, and especially in a time like now, like these relationships are great, especially that we can connect after so long. And like that goes to exactly what you're saying, these like lifelong friends that you can make from sports. I did want to take a little bit of turn into as you're going through high school, you're approaching your senior year. Obviously sports coming to an end, you're looking at possible routes, whether it's trades, college, all these different things is being pushed in your face. What is the route that you were looking at, and did you struggle with the decision like kind of like post high school?
So yeah, in high school, I was really focused on my academics and going to college. Like, I wanted to go to college out of state and everything, which is crazy because that's totally not what happened. But yeah, I mean, firefighting was not on the forefront of my mind in high school at all. And I don't know why. I wish it was, because I would have taken more like anatomy classes and stuff like that to get me prepared for EMT classes. And it was like the college route was just the first thing in my mind, and I didn't realize how well you can do on the fire department. So, I mean, to any audience members that are watching that are young and like struggling what to do, I mean, firefighting trades are just as good, if not better, than college.
Yeah, I would say that especially, and that's why like I love having these discussions, because especially when we were younger, all I remembered is them pushing school. Like, there wasn't any other options. And like, even if you looked at community college, they kind of looked down on that.
Yeah.
And I've said this multiple times. I wish I went to community college. Yeah. I would have saved mad money. It's not the popular
thing in high school. Everyone wants to go out of state to like big universities and everything. Community college, you get your gen eds, do what you got to do.
Yeah, it's you save so much money, and you get the same fucking piece of paper at the end of it. Like, I wish I did, but I got caught up in the whole facade of like I want to go to a 4-year school and do all the stupid shit, and like I end up not even fucking staying on campus. So it's like for people that do listen, if you are in that range of like high school, don't feel peer pressured to go to school just because everyone else is doing it.
Right, your friends are going out of state. Who's going to the biggest college or university?
It's
You're not going to see half of those kids after high school.
Facts. Because
It sounds cliche. They tell you that, but you don't realize it. How much your life changed, and now you need work to take care of your family.
No, it's facts. We become adults and we forget most of those people. Like what's the saying? Like you're only friends with them because you're with them every day.
Right.
Like so, a lot of the people that you're friends with then in high school tend to not really be your friends. The ones that stay your friends are the ones that get tried and true and tested. Like usually a lot of the time through sports because you're going through something with someone. And you're more likely to keep a friendship when you're going through something with someone because if the friendship's never been tested, when something comes their way, like some type of adversity, you don't know how people are going to react to it. So a lot of people might fold and they might not support you when shit goes a certain way or shit goes left. And that's when you really learn who your true friends are. And like, obviously it comes with experiences. We learn and we grow and we have to go through certain things in life. But being wary of like those experiences that you have with people and like knowing who you can confide in and who you can trust with certain information is super important when you're growing up. Because like, I don't think that's something that's really taught. It's something that kind of you just learn through social interactions. And it's
you just have to go through it.
Yeah. It's a weird experience because a lot of the stuff we learn, especially I feel bad for these kids now because like it's all social media. So everything you're seeing on social media is kind of what's the norm. And
I think it's important to make conversations with people. Like just get off your phone wherever you are and just talk to the person that's next to you because you have no idea what kind of talents that they have. Like people are amazing creatures. And like my mom was just telling me recently, she went to karaoke, and it's like these people that you would never guess go up there and sing, and it's like they could be on American Idol. You know what I mean? And you would never know just by looking at someone, but that's just a small example. I mean, there's tons of connections to be made out there. That's something that I've been doing more recently is just like talking to people, just picking their brain.
No, it goes back.
Something you do all the time.
Connection right there. You said the word without even like me forcing to bring it up in the conversation. Like that's why I've loved doing this so much is because I'm being able to like rekindle and like connect with so many different people. Like you got here, what? It was almost like a couple hours ago, probably an hour and a half we talked and like chatted up. And like, that's what like you guys on the podcast that are watching or listening, that's what you don't see is you hear this hour conversation that we have. And I mean, it's obviously not scripted. We have nothing in front of us. We're just having a conversation.
And we weren't on our phones for the most part. I mean, there's a few things like you showed me here and there, but
I showed you some stuff where I'm not going to say what I showed him, but like,
we won't talk about that.
Yeah, but like, it's the hours that I'm spending with the people that are so valuable because that's when like the real conversations that we can have unfiltered and like talking about stuff obviously come on a podcast a little bit more polished, a little bit more professional. Obviously there's boundaries that we respect in the conversation of a podcast, but eventually in the future I'd like to make the whole thing a podcast and talk about shit. And
you will.
I think I'll get there, and that's the big goal, and I'm trying to. I hate using the word manifest because that word's become such a watered down nowadays, but like that's what
needs to be talked about. Obviously, that's why the big podcasts they talk about such touchy subjects and things like that. So like, that's what needs to be talked about really to like break the barriers with mental health and everything that. And
that's what I'm trying to do is like to break that barrier, especially with men, to have the conversation about mental health. And you actually worked at Butler Hospital, and I have too. And like my father works there as well. So like you've been in that field where you understand that atmosphere. Because I don't think a lot of people, and I'm glad that you brought up the mental health aspect without like me kind of like bringing it up.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't understand like that side of the mental health, but they talk about the feeling depressed or feeling anxious, but they don't talk about legit anxiety or legit like manic depression or a bipolar or these actual illnesses that people suffer from. And me and you both have seen these stuff in real time. and how it affects people. And that's why I want to have these conversations where I'm checking in with people, seeing how everyone's doing, like, and we can talk about mental health in real time and be like respectful about it.
Yeah, and it goes both ways. Like, you're checking on people, but you also need to have those connections for your own mental health. And I think it's interesting, like something that a friend of mine always told people, some people that were coming into Butler. It's like, do you have any hobbies? Like, what are your hobbies? And that was interesting because you hear different hobbies that people have or don't have. And it's like some people need something besides work or their kids, because once that stuff is gone, like, you need to have something to fall back on.
100%. Like that's literally the reason I started this part. Well, part of it was when I was in a toxic work environment. I was telling you a little bit. I lived in Georgia and Texas and all that stuff. When I was in Georgia, I was in a toxic work environment and I quit. And I kind of looked at my life and I'm like, what am I providing to this world? Like, yeah, I'm doing a job, I'm doing a service. Like, I'm providing obviously something, but what am I doing that's like valuable, really? Like, I don't feel like I'm doing anything to help people. And that was a scary thing to admit to myself, where I'm like, I'm not doing anything positive, like, besides work, obviously. And
But you caught it, though. You caught it. Like,
Yeah.
you noticed that, you know?
yeah, and in that space, I started doing. I was really into Joe Rogan at the time, and I loved the free flowing format of his podcast. I kind of taken that into my own way, and I've kind of just done it. I've taken his format and made it my own.
Yeah.
And I'm still learning. I'm still growing. Obviously, I'm approaching 100 episodes, is fucking wild to me. But the fact that I've been able to stick at something, and even my mom said it a couple weeks ago, is like, I'm surprised you're still doing it. I'm like,
yeah, good for you, man. You have a routine too. Like, that's big.
yeah, and I'm so big on routine. I think consistency is a huge aspect in being successful, whether it's being a successful friend, worker, father, you name
Absolutely.
it, like anything. You have to be
Like,
consistent.
I just saw something recently on social media. You need to have a routine. And I'm trying to think, like, what are my routines? Because it switches up all the time. I'm a firefighter, 2 days on, 2 nights, and then you're off for 4 days. Sometimes you sleep till, you know, God knows when. Sometimes you do something different. So it's tough sometimes to have a routine. But as a dad, it's like, we do have a routine. We have a bedtime routine. You know, we read books before bed. We don't watch TV. And I think that's important.
Yeah.
And we always read books. I'll let my daughter pick out which book she wants, because I think that's important for her to be able to pick. You know, I'll be like, here's 4 books. You get to pick 2. So it gives her a little bit of power to be able to read what she wants to read. And we read, and then it's lights out. And she knows that every time. And it's like security for her, and it's a routine for us. And that's just one example. I mean,
I think that's super important too, especially the reading aspect. I mean, especially in early development too with children, reading is so fucking crucial. Like,
kids need to be reading. And
Yeah.
another thing, one of the doctors that I went to for something, I have no idea. I don't remember what it was, but she said she was also a teacher, a kindergarten teacher, and kids were coming in not knowing how to hold a pencil.
damn.
Which is like, I mean, I guess they're just not drawing as much. They're on the tablets and phones so
Yeah.
much that they're not drawing. So I make sure she draws a lot, and she has like that little creative space.
Obviously, yeah, and obviously we live in like a social media technology world. What's your kind of like, and we'll dive into a little bit of kind of like being a young father and like in today's age and how that's been for you. But I'm curious about this since you kind of talked about it too. Like, what's like your tolerance too for your daughter and technology? Like, how are you managing that?
It's balanced, and it's easier said than done, because as a parent, things are going a million miles an hour, and you're trying to do your own thing and let your kid do their own thing while you're getting stuff done. So it's easy to just throw the TV on, stuff like that. But it's tough during the winter too. During the summer, we always try to get out there, like every day, going, playing sports and going on trips. We go on adventures all the time and stuff like that. A lot of outdoor stuff. And yeah, she's not getting an iPhone until she's like 20.
I'd probably do the same thing, straight up, like, because it's so sad the way that the world projects onto young teens, especially, and how, I mean, even when I think back to like myself when I was that young, like how impressionable I was and how easily I was being molded without really
Yeah,
realizing
we
it.
had social media at a young age too, if you think about it.
Yeah, we
We
were
had MySpace.
I think we were like we're in a weird like position because like we grew up having a normal childhood, I guess you could say, with before. I mean, technology was a thing.
Before all that.
But I'll say before social media. I
Yeah,
think that's
we
a
were
better
right
way.
in
And then as we grew up, that's when the MySpace, the Facebook, the Snapchat, Vine, like that's when this shit started coming. So we have some perspective with it. And I think that'll help us as we become older. I mean, I can imagine it's probably helped you to a certain extent being a parent now, having that childhood where you were able to like be a child and like experience life. So
Absolutely.
I think that probably plays an important role into it. I think we'll see it more when Gen Z starts to become parents.
Right.
I mean,
and they never had any of that.
yeah, and I mean, technically, I know I'm 26. I'm technically a millennial. Are you Gen Z technically?
I'll be 26 in July.
So I don't know if you're on the cusp because I don't know if it's. I'd have to look at the dates because it's so fucking close. Some people, like,
But I mean, we grew up. Like,
you're more millennial than Gen
yeah.
Z, if anything, especially the way you carry
Similar.
yourself.
Yeah, well, I live with my grandfather, so
I mean, that's
I get
facts.
a lot of wisdom from him, man.
Let's dive into being a young dad today, and then we'll obviously dive into firefighting in your career a little right after this. But I mean, young. You said 21, correct? Like,
Yeah.
you became a dad. What was that like? The initial, like, you're gonna have a daughter. Like, that's a lot to take in at such a young age. Like what's kind of like going through your mind at that point?
The first thing going through my mind was like, I have to make a lot of money right now.
True.
But I realized it's so much more to it than money. It's your time, like we were talking about before. Like, your time is your biggest commodity, more than money. And kids need constant attention and time. And so that was like a big learning experience for me. I didn't realize. I mean, I realized, but you don't really realize until you're in it. It's like they just need constant attention. They want you all the time. So being a young dad, when I found out that my daughter's mother was pregnant, I was working at a roofing company at the time, commercial roofing. So I was making pretty good money. And it was actually during the winter. I was like shoveling and snow blowing with my cousin. So I'm like, oh yeah, we're making money. Didn't realize, way more than that. But so I was working roofing, and I actually lost that job while I think right after my daughter was born. She was like very young. So I had to find work, and a lot happened from one time to the next, but I ended up becoming a firefighter. But it's a learning experience,
Yeah, it's something
like-
that you don't know until you go through it.
Yeah.
Like, you could read a million books on how to be a dad or how to be a parent in general, and it's never going to
100%.
prepare you. Like,
Right.
because there's so many different things, and like, just because someone goes through something and shares that and you read about it doesn't mean it's going to correlate to your experience and like where you're living. So
Also, like, I mean, my daughter's mother and myself, we were together for the entire pregnancy. After my daughter was born, we were kind of on and off. And then when my daughter was about 2 years old, we broke up. We're great friends. We've known each other forever. We're still good friends to this day. But for me, it's different because my parents were married up until I was 18. So being a single dad, as well as being a young dad, it's a everyday struggle. And it's not something that has like been done before in my family. Like, I'm grateful enough to have parents that were married. So my dad taught me how to be a man, how to be a father. But to be a single father, that's kind of something that I've been learning how to do on my own. And it's just like an everyday thing. You just learn as you go.
yeah,
No script. There's no way I can really tell you how to be a good dad,
yeah. I'm gonna do this. Oh, I'm sorry. The camera, I have to spread it. It's only 30 minutes.
All right.
But I do want to commend you and her as well for being able to co-parent and being able to work
You
out.
have to.
Yeah, because a lot of
You
people.
brought a child into this world, and I think we both realize that it's all about her. Like, we both love her a lot, and like I said, we've known each other forever, so we're still friends, and we don't let anything get in the way of just our love for her and just having peace. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So rather than being together and having her growing up in an environment that's like not organic, we'd rather do it this way where, she's growing up, she has two parents that love her, and it's peaceful. There's no arguing all the time. And
I think that's the best way to raise children is as long as there's peace in like the environment between you two, that's ideal. Like, because I was going to say was like, most people can't do that. That's not happening in a lot of households. And especially now that I've had a lot of conversations with people and seeing different things, because my parents are still together, to see how I was raised versus how other people were raised, and like to see when families separate, how left it can go for some people, and like it really can derail a lot of people's growth, like growing up, and the fact that you guys can able to come to that compromise and do it so quickly, and to be able to, hey, we're gonna do this for the betterment of our daughter because we love her, and like that's what we're here to do, is to raise her the best way we can. And you both deserve like a round of applause. If I knew what button it was, I would click it for you. Like, I don't want to click the wrong one and hit the fucking trombone. That'd be fucking awkward. But like, that is so crazy, because like the times that we're living in is a lot of people are going through what you're going through, and I think that's like a relatable like experience, and that's part of the reason that I was like eager to interview you and like talk about these different aspects, because I don't have children currently, and it's something that I do want. And you're going through it at such a young age to be able to do it. You kind of have to mature at a faster rate.
You have to just mature and realize that, like, this is what I want now. Like, it didn't work between myself and her mother, so this is how it's gonna be, and that's it. Like, there's no going back and forth. I didn't want that for my daughter. You know what I mean? I've seen that happen before, and I think we're better off this way than going back and forth and arguing and sometimes being together, sometimes not. So
yeah, I would agree. If you can come to that compromise too in a relationship, especially when there's children involved, it's like it's the best way to go. Like, especially if the parties aren't happy with each other, like when things aren't like aligned with your visions and values of where you want to go and towards the future, and you can come to an agreement like, hey, we're gonna co-parent and work this thing out, and we'll make the best of this. And like, I think that's fucking ideal, man. And like, I give you this huge credit.
Thank you. I would just say choose your own battles. For anyone who is like in that family relationship where both parties love the kid and they want to see the kid, like, just choose your battles. Don't argue over the dumbest shit. You know what I mean? Like, there's no need to be going back and forth about stupid stuff. Just put it on the back burner, forget about it. Focus on the kid and just like the positive aspects of the relationship.
I think that's fucking awesome advice, and I think people do need to take that in and actually apply it, because so many people will be fucking selfish and like they'll do things for themselves and like kind of put their children on the back burner, and it's like, and then the children suffer, and it's fucking sad to see so many children suffer because of fucking parents that fucking are egotistical or narcissistical and choose themselves over their children, or choose their own happiness over their children. And like, you see it all the time. And like, I feel for those children who become adults, because a lot of time when they do become adults, the cycle continues. And like, that's the scary part in society, where I don't know if a lot of people are taking the time to heal and deal with the traumas that they have coming from homes that are broken. Like, what you guys are doing, you're creating a home that is solid, and like, that's fucking awesome. Like, and I think that's really like commendable too, especially given like the situation that you guys found yourself in, and you can work through that and
making the best of the situation.
Yeah,
that's what you do in life.
Facts. And I think that's literally what the last couple episodes I've been having is kind of going through that, is like the journey, being patient with the process, being intentional with things. Like, you guys are being intentional with your relationship, and like, you're patient with the way things are going, and like, it's your journey. Like, you guys decide how this goes for yourself, and you could either, like you said, you could be positive and make the best of it, or you could be angry and bitter and just make the worst of it. And no one wants being angry or bitter or negative, and no one wants that.
I mean, there's no reason for it anyway. My daughter's mom, she's a great mom, you know?
Yeah, facts.
So, I mean, that's the most important thing. That's all I could ask for. So we have respect for each other. You have to have respect for each other.
Yeah, you're a good dad, and she's a good mom, and that's ideally what you want. Like, two good people raising an amazing daughter. She's going to become an amazing person. We're trying to create good people for society to go forward. I think that's
absolutely.
And we were talking a little bit about this, like,
and you don't necessarily need that two parent household in order for that to happen.
You just need two people who are raising the children to love the child. Right. Like, and it doesn't need to, and I know we live in this culture where obviously the relationships are dynamic. It could be man, woman, they, them, whatever. As long as you have two people raising the child, more, obviously if you poly or whatever, like whatever the situation is, but like, give the best chance to those children, because those children didn't ask to come into this world. And like, I talk about this with my mom a lot. Is like, as children, we don't ask to come here. So as parents, you need to provide them the best life that you possibly can, and like love them the way that maybe you didn't get loved as children because they didn't ask to be here.
Right.
And if you're going to, because I was listening to someone talk about this in a podcast, like having children is kind of selfish, and I'm like, I heard the perspective. I don't necessarily agree with it fully, but like it made sense. Like, because the child has no say whether they're coming into Earth or not. Like, they're now here, and like it's your responsibility as a parent to be a parent forever. Like, that's a lifelong commitment. And I think if more people woke up to that mindset, that being a parent isn't just until they're 18 and then they're on their own. Like, no, like it's a lifelong thing, and like being a part of their life and creating this legacy. And like, people might think it's corny when you think about legacies, but like, it's kind of the reason that we're here on Earth is to create a generation of I guess you could say offspring, and that procreates and keeps going in forward. And that's kind of what all animals do. And we are an animal.
Right. And we have to move forward. That's like the only option. We have to move forward, whether it's a two parent household or a one parent household. We have to move forward and advance, be better than the last generation.
Yeah. That I always say that. And like, I'm thankful for my family. I lived a great life, but I want better for my children. And I lived a great life, but I want better. Like, it's a constant like elevation where you want to keep going upwards. Like,
right. You're always moving forward, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, I read a book recently, The Science of Getting Rich. And it talks about how everything is originated from a thought, which I know you talked about on your podcast before. But it's also about advancement, like just constantly moving forward. Like, you should make that the theme of your life. Like, don't move backwards. So that's something that I've been trying to focus on. And it's easier said than done. You have to find a balance, you know?
Yeah.
Cut out bad habits and, you know?
Yeah. Excuse me. I literally say that all the time on the podcast. Like, I literally had an episode called Feeling Stuck, where I talked about my own feelings vulnerably on a podcast. Like, most people, if they had those feelings, probably wouldn't talk about them openly. And like,
right. I give you a lot of credit for that, man.
I appreciate that.
You have a lot of balls to be doing this. I mean, there's not a lot of kids our age that are doing something like this.
Yeah. I just want to, I'm trying my best to, one, be honest with myself, and two, create a platform where people can feel comfortable to come on. We talk about their life. We talk about like things that are happening in the world, the dynamics of everything, and like just have a legit conversation where people feel comfortable. And like, I'm trying my best to create, like, carve my own little path for myself. And it goes back to everything we've talked about in this podcast, is like, you kind of have to beat to like your own drum essentially, and just kind of just do you.
And it's making you better because you're looking at the videos and you're saying, oh, what did I say wrong? What did I say right? And you've done it almost 100 times now. So like, the progress that you've made, I can't even imagine. I haven't watched the early episodes.
Oh man, I cringed a little bit.
Yeah, you cringed, man. I'm probably gonna be cringing watching this too. But I hope some of my friends decide to get on the podcast with you, or you know, who knows where it's gonna go, man.
That's what I hope
think you're gonna be very successful.
I hope so. I hope. I have good visions for this, and like I think I have the opportunities in front of me, and I think TikTok too has allowed me to, since I've gained like an audience there, kind of in a way validated a little bit that I am a good content creator. Like, I can create good content. I can create stuff that people want to consume, that people relate to. I think the relatability of content is more valuable than the actual content. If people can relate to it, then that's authentic and it's real. And that's all that matters, is people can hear what you're saying and be like, yeah, I relate and I empathize with what he's saying. And that's my ultimate goal, is just being someone that can speak the truth. Like, we're always in this society, like, speak your truth. No, let's speak the truth. Like, I'm tired of this here and there. Like, I just want honesty. I want realness. I'm moving past this facade of this bullshit world that social media is creating. Like, let's just talk real. Like, I'm not a perfect person. I'm toxic sometimes. I'm an asshole. Like, but I'm also a good person too. So like, and
that's why people like podcasts, is because you're actually having a real conversation, and that's like supply and demand. There's not a lot of that going around right now because it's social media. There's so much of that. So I guess that's probably why, you know, people are successful like Joe Rogan.
Yeah, it's that authentic self. And I do want to I don't want to get too late in the podcast before I do this, and talk about your decision to become a firefighter and get into the fire department. Like, what was, obviously we talked a little bit before about schooling, how you're looking at different options. Like, what was the decision to get into this career path, and how has it been for you so far?
It's been awesome, man. Honestly, I love going to work every day. I never thought I'd say, like, I love going to work. I enjoy my days off as well, but I mean, I have a lot of fun when I'm there, and I'm also obviously doing something that's meaningful. But it definitely started after high school, probably sometime around the time I was roofing. I was watching the firefighters all the time. I'd be up on the roof, and I'm like, I'm already up here. I might as well be on the ladder truck, you know? I was a very young kid when I was like, I love firefighters. Like, I think every boy at some point is like, or even girls.
I was a cop kid.
I want to be a cop or a firefighter.
Yeah,
like,
it's
cool.
either one.
You see the lights and sirens, and it's like cool. It's adrenaline. And I lived next door to the fire station in Riverside. That was my first apartment. So I used to watch them guys every day. I used to go visit them. And so, like, the spark started there. But like I said, I was more focused on other things in high school. And then afterwards, I was doing roofing. I learned how to work hard. And I also have one of my friends, his father and his uncle are both retired firefighters. His father is still a firefighter in Providence. But so I spent a lot of time with him, and took me into the station, and like I fell in love with it all over again. I'm like a little kid again.
I fucking love that.
Every day I'm like a little kid. Like, I'm getting on a fire truck. You know, it's like the best thing in the world.
I fucking love hearing that, and because I had John Sisto on, and you know John, I've had him on twice now.
He was just at the station. He just undersprayed all of our trucks.
Yeah, he wants to get back into it. Like, he really does, and like he talks about it with like a lot of passion, and like that he really enjoyed it, and like that was something. It was like something new every day, and like that's what he really enjoyed about it. And
It is.
I think you might agree with this. It sounds like it's also, when he talked about it, the brotherhood of it.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, I mean, I'm assuming there might be some women too, obviously, that are firefighters.
Yeah.
But like, when I say brotherhood, it's including all of them. Like,
Absolutely. They
Does
don't
it-
take offense to it.
yeah.
Trust me, they don't.
So like, with that, does it kind of like help, since you like, for me, because I know when I lost football, I felt like I lost something a little bit, and a lot of it was that bonding with the brothers and stuff, playing football. Like, did you get a little bit of that back when you started doing this?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, after high school, you're hanging out with a lot of people. People are drinking, doing dumb shit.
Yeah.
And so you decide you don't want to hang out with those people anymore. And then you have a few friends that you hang out with here and there. But for the fire department, for me, it's like I met a whole new group of people from all walks of life who are successful, and they do different things. And one person was a carpenter before, another person does this and that. And you learn so much, like, about traveling and the different things people do, different cultures that they're from. So that was good, and I enjoy that. I learned something new every day.
Yeah, you probably talk to a lot of people too, because I mean, obviously, you're getting calls throughout the day and stuff. So
Yeah.
you're interacting with so many different people. And obviously, we don't have to talk about this, but like I know John mentioned too, some of the calls that he had can be very traumatic too. When you experience a lot of that, it comes with being a first responder, that you're going to experience things that can be traumatic. And obviously, I know there's confidentiality with this type of stuff, so we don't have to dive into that.
No, I think it's important. We should.
Okay, let's dive into it, because I would love to talk about these things and like how that has affected you seeing these things. So obviously, you're getting called to a lot of these traumatic things that are happening in the world, and people sometimes don't realize how often they do happen.
Right. I mean, as a firefighter, you're going to the worst things. You're going to fires, car crashes, medical emergencies. No one ever has a good day and says, oh, I'm going to call 911. So you're going to people on bad days, and you see a lot of bad stuff. And I think it's important for people. It's tough for me to explain to you the type of things that I see every day. So it's good for me to have a friend that's a firefighter. You know what I mean? And like, one of my good friends is looking to get on the fire department, and he understands where I'm coming from. You know what I mean? Like, I can tell you and you understand as well, but you need to have like that peer group. And
I can
think that's
empathize
important.
with you, but
Right.
I might not be able to fully understand because I don't have the experience. I think that's what
Right,
what you're hitting
right.
at.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's important to have like a peer support group of some kind. It doesn't have to be like formal, but for any firefighter, I think that they should have, like, even if it's like around a campfire, just like talking about all the bad shit that we've seen. it's important to talk about that stuff, you know?
I think it's good for the mental health. I think
Yeah.
that ties into everything we've talked about too, is the mental health aspect of first responders that people don't talk about, because there are those negative aspects and people talk about it, whether it's police and there's domestic violence and there's drinking and drug addictions, and like there's negative things that can happen when you don't talk about the mental health stuff. So is that something that you guys address in like
Oh, they
your
make
department?
that huge, yeah. They make that huge, and like obviously there's debriefings after like really traumatic situations, but like I said, I mean, I think sometimes even those little debriefings from people that I've talked to that have been through really traumatic stuff, it's like those don't even help as much as I think a peer group of just talking to your guys and doing it regularly. I think helps people, and I've never even been to one, but I know like my friend's dad, he runs support groups all the time, and that's huge. I mean, the suicides from in the fire department. I mean, I think you're more likely to die from a suicide on the fire department than you are on duty.
Damn, that's
I just
crazy.
read that.
And that, to me, that makes a lot of sense too. I mean, the suicide rates have gone up too since the pandemic, and that's something I've talked about in the podcast. And especially with men. Men, I think the number was men are 4 to 5 times more likely to commit suicide than women, and it's a scary thing because a lot of time we don't talk about our feelings. We don't talk about the things that we've seen or experienced, and we internalize it, and like we try to put on this strong figure. And obviously, as a firefighter, you're trying to do that. Your whole job is personified as being the strong hero.
And not only that, people are going home to their families that are married, and they don't want to talk about that kind of stuff around people who like I can empathize, but they don't really understand what they've been through anyway. So why go home and talk about it? You know?
Yeah, and I think that's why this like the support groups are so crucial. And we kind of talked about a little bit off record about that stuff. But I've been to therapy, and that's something that I openly advocate for people to try, because especially as a man, to say that I've gone to therapy and I found success in therapy, it was something that I really valued, and I really would encourage people to try it at least. It's not for everybody, but it's something to know at least. It's a tool that can help a lot of people. And I think specifically with men, if we just tried it, it would save a lot of relationships. It would save a lot of people. It would save lives. And it would stop this generational fucking trauma that keeps getting passed down to so many people. And as men, I think the term man up is valuable. And I've learned to appreciate it now that I've kind of experienced the full range of emotions now. And because I've always internalized, I was kind of going through this battle of like the last couple of years, kind of openly on the podcast too. So like you could probably hear the growth if people have been listening the entire time. When I first started, I was really getting into my emotions. I was really kind of being a more emotional dude and like expressing myself, and I still am. And I was always taught to just man up my entire life. I played sports, not to cry, you can't be a bitch, like all this shit. You hear it all the time. But then I started to saying, no, I'm going to experience it. And the problem was I experienced it to the extent where I was hurting other people, where I was like, these are my feelings, fuck everybody else. And that's not healthy either.
Yeah.
Bottling them and then fully expressing them, both are not healthy. So I chose to go to therapy, and I've learned tools to better address my emotions, to identifying triggers that might cause maybe there's an anger outburst, and I could better manage that and not allow that to get out into like whether it's my partner or my friend or my mom or my dad or my brothers.
Yeah, don't try to be a hero and then explode on your family, and like you said, just pass down that negativity down to your family. I mean, there's something to be said about being stoic, especially as a man with your family, but definitely don't hesitate to reach out to those support groups and peer groups, even if it's not your family, just people who understand you or just listen, you know what I mean? Just talking like just us, you know?
Yeah, and this is exactly what I'm trying to do, is like have this open dialogue. Like we're and like social media in general, often do you see two men talking about mental health and expressing traumas and what they've gone through and talking about support groups and stuff like that. You don't really see that.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's why the suicide rates are climbing. I mean, so I commend what you're doing, I think.
I'm essentially would love to try to help those people, and like eventually future in my career, I want to create a business like about life coaching, and like I don't want to be a therapist. I want to help people improve their lives the best I can. I want to help people if they want therapy, how to get to therapy, and maybe how to improve their lives in that aspect, or motivate them to get into the gym or connect them with a fitness trainer. Like I want to have those, and that's why I'm creating so many connections, is I want to build that network of people that I know so many different avenues. Hey, you want to get into firefighting? I know someone. Hey,
100%, man.
you know someone that is into detailing? I know someone. You want to know someone that's into videography? I know someone. And I want to create these I want to gain these experiences with talking to people. So if I do eventually get into life coaching, that I have the connects where I could help people who need help. And that's what my vision is, and that's where I'm trying to take this eventually, because I don't want to be one of those young kids that I hate the young people that are life coaches. Like, how are you going to tell people how to live life with no life experience? Like, I'm not knocking those people, but it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, I think the best life coaches have life experience. It just makes sense to me. We are getting towards the back end of the podcast. Let me do this real quick so I get perfect. Sorry for you guys that are listening specifically. My camera only records in 30-minute intervals, and I try not to miss it. So, like, there's so many buttons that I'm trying to click. But with wrapping up the podcast, is there anything that we didn't hit before we get to like the back end? I know actually we got a decent amount of time. I know music was something that you were passionate about. Do you still actively play and things like that?
So I come from a very musically inclined family. From a very young age, I went to church a lot growing up too. That's something that I wanted to talk about. I won't get too crazy into it, but I think that's something, we went to church twice a week, and it was a Pentecostal Christian church. It wasn't a Catholic church. Not knocking the Catholic church, but this is just a lot different, so I wanted to clarify that. But I think that definitely kept my family grounded, and that's something I want to get my daughter into, like, very soon. But I learned how to play bongos when I was at this church, because they played a lot of music there. So I actually started with bongos. That was my first instrument. And then I moved on to drums. And then I eventually taught myself how to play the keys. And so that kind of evolved into beat making and Fruity Loops, FL Studio. So, that's pretty much it with the music stuff. I do it really now for, like, therapy. That's my therapy. That's like my outlet, my hobby. I say everyone should have a hobby. That's mine. And I'll like dabble in it here and there, playing the keys or making beats or whatever. But it's kind of just like my zone where I don't think about anything, and I'm just locked in.
I love that, because like I love when people talk about what's therapy. Some people like the gym, some people like reading, some people journaling, music. This is my therapy.
Exactly.
And
man.
like someone said it to me, and I've stuck with it ever since, was like, after we finished, they're like, that felt like a therapy session. I'm like,
it was pretty much.
Yeah, I'm like, that's exactly what I'm trying to go for, is like when people come over, like to give them kind of like an authentic therapy session for free, essentially, like where we're talking about life, talking about our problems, talking about bullshit, and like we're not on our phones. Like we're literally sitting across from each other for multiple hours having a conversation in real time, just shooting the shit, and like that's missing from today.
Yeah.
And I'm
Your screen time must be down to a minimum with all the editing and everything.
My screen time is so high, dude. Like I can, because like with being a content creator, I try to pay attention to everything.
Yeah.
I try to watch the trends. I try to watch the algorithm.
The algorithms, man, you brought that up, and I didn't really, I knew it was a thing, but I didn't really realize until you talk more about it. And it's like,
it takes you in, and you don't even, a lot of people don't realize like the power of an algorithm. It gives you what you want. So what you pay attention to is what you're going to see. You don't even have to like it. You just
change
be watching
it really changes your life.
Yeah. And like, because like my old algorithm used to be cars, women, stupid shit. And I'm like, the fuck is this? Like, I don't want this. Like, yeah, do I like seeing women? Yeah, it's dope. But like, there's no benefit for this. This is actually negative. It's making me kind of in a certain way sexualize women. I'm like, this is not healthy. Like, it's not
putting
good.
your life in a different direction.
Yeah, it's a dark path, and it does that for a lot of men, which it can be toxic, and it's pushed in today's society with OF and things like that, where it's like romanticized a little bit. Hey, you can make so much money, and there's like obviously sex sells, so I get it, but like I removed all that and followed all the Instagram models. I followed like, I'm not really a car person, so I unfollowed all that bullshit. I'm not like a dog person. I don't have dog pages. I started following quote pages. I started following podcasts. I started following people that were motivational speakers. And like, now that's what my page is. All I see is positive stuff.
Yeah.
I removed the negative.
You feel better?
Yeah, I feel a lot better.
Yeah.
And like, I still have my memes. I'm a meme guy. I love memes. So I got my memes here and there. But like, I'm always seeing quotes, and like, it's always positive and like spiritual and like things that I'm interested in that are positive and healthy. So once you pay attention to those things, I think it's super beneficial. Is there anything specific with religion that you want to get into before we start wrapping up?
I don't want to get too much into religion. I still believe in God.
Yeah. I mean,
think
whatever you want to get to.
The views have changed a lot over the years. I mean, the church that we went to, we didn't celebrate Halloween.
I understand, though.
And, we didn't do certain things and did do certain things. But, I mean, overall, I think it was positive. And it doesn't have to be one type of religion, but the main thing is, too, is like I have a big family, and my whole family used to go to church. So my grandparents would go, my uncles and aunts, my cousins, and we used to see each other all the time. And even aside from the religion, just the seeing each other all the time, like, really kept my family grounded. And that's like why I want to get my daughter back into church. It's not going to be the same as my family dynamic because my parents were together and all that, but you never know where it's going to take you, and I think it's important.
No, I'd
Probably
agree.
not what people want to hear, but it's the truth.
No, I think honestly, I'm more spiritually based. I fell out of church early on in my life, and I've talked to I think it was Alex Medeiros on episode. It's going way back. I think it was like 10 or something. Was it 10? Might have been 10. I'm not too sure, but he's a very open on social media about his beliefs, and he's criticized sometimes for it, but part of the reason I wanted to talk to him was I wanted to know why he thought what he did and what he believed in. And it wasn't to criticize him for anything, but I think a lot what's missing in today's society is the structure that a religion brings. I think religion brings structure, and I think part of the reason our society is fucking decaying in front of our faces is because there's no structure.
100%.
And I think that is a huge aspect of it. I would not... I personally believe what I believe, but I would never tell someone to not believe in a religion or something like that. I think that's
right.
people. I think people who do that
force
stupid.
anything on anybody, but
You should believe in something. Like
Yeah.
I don't. Whether and if you believe in nothing, I mean, you're still believing in something. So like, I mean, at the end of the day, like whatever you believe, it's just don't push that onto other people. You could always open your arms. I think the best thing to do is educate people. If someone's interested and curious about what you believe in, you answer questions, and you hate towards those people. Like nowadays people are so like, if you don't believe what they believe, it's like, fuck you. It's like, why can't we have an open, honest discussion when
Right.
things, just because we believe in different things doesn't mean I hate you as a person.
Yeah.
Like I could have all the love in the world and we just believe different things. There's nothing wrong with that.
I believe in God, and I think the main thing that's changed for me over the years is like I believe in God and more of like he's in nature now,
Yeah.
I'm like an outdoors guy, and I like to go hiking and doing all that stuff, and that's like my personal belief now. Like there's more of a connection between God and nature for me. Like I think something's responsible for all this, but I think it's like just kind of tied in,
Yeah, no,
also
I like,
connected.
instead of the word God, now I use source or universe.
Right.
It's to me, it's the same thing. Like
Something.
something
Higher.
I don't, because I do. It's something like I. It's like, who am I to say what I know what it is? I don't like. So like, for me, I pulled out of the whole religion aspect just based on my own experiences. Like early young, I've never really talked about this, but like when I was young, I lost a lot of family members very quickly, and it kind of just questioned my faith. I was like, I don't. Why would someone do this? Why would they take away all these different people from me? And I was able to kind of like, I respect my mom for allowing me to do this. I went up to her and was like, I don't want to continue with this. Like, I don't believe this. And she respected that. She still believes in God. She still holds her faith, and like she allowed me to make my own decision. And like
That's awesome as a
like,
parent to be
yeah.
able to do that, because that's tough, especially when it's your own kid.
and I was young. I was probably like 4th, 5th grade when I made that decision. Like elementary school, like most parents would be like, no, you're fucking going. You're still going. Like,
But the fact that she still believed, like despite your decision, that must have been kind of interesting for you to see that she still believed.
yeah, it's we joke it like she a few years ago she got me a cross when she was out in Vegas, and I still wear it a lot. Like I don't wear it because I believe in God or a God. I believe it because it symbolizes what she believes in, and that she gave it to me as like a gift, and it symbolizes her to me.
Right.
And because people have questioned this, like, why would you wear a cross if you don't believe in it? It's not because I believe in the cross; it's because it's the sentiment behind it. It's because my mom gave it to me and she believed in that, and like I hold that to me.
Yeah,
because
it's the connection.
Yeah,
Everything's connected.
Everything's connected, and like that's what it's all about. And I'm glad that we went down and had this conversation, because I don't. Not too many people are comfortable talking about religion, because obviously it's taboo to a certain extent with certain people. But that's just like hearing someone like acknowledge that too, like that she was able to allow me to make that decision, because that is a big decision.
Yeah, from a parent standpoint.
Yeah.
You know, most people would sway their child like, this is the way it is. This is how we believe. This is it, you know?
Yeah, I just think because my dad wasn't super religious, like I think he became a member of the church, so we get married to my mom and all that stuff, because that's the way they did it back then and shit. But
is it a Catholic church?
Yeah. And because I went to CCD and all that stuff, and then I stopped at CCD. I got my first communion, and I was like, I just told my mom, I was like, I don't believe in this. Like, going to all this, like, the classes, and I'm like, this is not for me. And, like, I kind of came to that realization once I lost my grandmother, and, like, going through that, and then it was just, like, I lost a bunch of family members in a quick period, and I kind of impressed myself when I look back on it, to be able to critically think, to be like, hey, this is not something that I agree with, and, like, to vocalize that, and I appreciate my mom for not forcing me to continue with something, because I probably would have resented it, and I probably would have been more angry towards people who are religious if I was forced to do something that I didn't want to do.
Yeah.
So to be where I'm at, like, I'm more open to it. Like I accept people. If that's what people want to believe, that's fine. I think it's better, to be honest, when people have their faith. I respect a lot of people who have their faith and hold their faith closely, because the values tied to the religions are what are usually most important, because
right.
I'm more bigger on like the values that people have, and usually the values are determined from either family or religion, and that's something that people just don't really acknowledge, and that is definitely what's missing. I mean, we have a bunch of fucking people running around who just do whatever and don't believe in anything specific, and I mean, you could say that I don't believe in anything specific, but it's a lot of the beliefs that I have are rooted in my early, like, childhood with religion. Like, I just use different. Sorry, guys, I had some camera technical difficulties, so we're gonna start wrapping up the podcast, anyways. But is there anything specifically that you didn't get to mention that we haven't yet? I think we touched on just about everything.
I think we got everything.
All right, perfect. So
I'll be back.
Yeah, definitely. So last question for you is, what would your advice be to someone who wants to pursue their passion?
Just do whatever you want to do. That's it. You only have one life. So do what it is that you want to do. Believe in yourself. It sounds cliche, but anything's possible. It's been done before. It can be done again. Everything originates as a thought. So everything that we see was once a thought. So if somebody can think something up, then you can think up anything that you want. You just have to put your mind to it and just lock in, focus on it. Somebody told me before that a light of a lamp will light the entire room, but it doesn't have that much power. But a laser, that focused, locked in beam, can cut through steel walls and concrete and bricks. So just focus.
I like that. Perfect way to wrap up this podcast. I've had a blast catching up with you, Johnny. This has been fucking amazing. It's been years, so this has been great to get you on this podcast and talk about your life.
Definitely.
So we'll definitely have to do this again in the future and catch up and see where things are going.
Yeah, man.
But again, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'll give you guys the spiel. If you guys like the podcast, please rate, review, subscribe, share with your friends, share it with your family, share it with your grandma. You can check it out at thecarrollconnection.simplecast.com. Also available Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the major listening platforms. So until next time, guys, peace.